so good to be back with you once again on the India Development Debate right here on ET Now. Let's put the spotlight on the second edition of the India Development Debate tonight. It's raining sops for farmers as the countdown for 2019 elections have begun. The Modi government today announced a 200 rupee per quintal hike in the support price for paddy in a bid to douse the farm fury. The Union Cabinet has also cleared a proposal to guarantee cost plus 50% procurement price for 14 farm products, including food grains and cotton, while Modi's critics say the hike in price is too little and perhaps a tad too late. Economists and agriculturists believe it is just a short-term solution to woo the farmers. Some of them also fear that the hike in support prices will have a recoil effect on inflation, although the government says it is too simplistic an argument to be made.
Now, we at ET Now have always championed the cause of farmers whose fortunes are critical to a rising India, but are higher MSPs and loan waivers the real solution to the agrarian crisis? To quote MS Swaminathan's widely accepted report, the real answer lies in substantial hike in public investment in R&D, farm infrastructure and logistics. The list of deliverables also includes lower interest on farm loans, increased reach of credit lines and a moratorium on debt recovery. The hike in support prices for farm produce and what it means to the economy at large, that's the topic of discussion tonight on the India Development Debate in the second edition. And joining us for this show, we've got Gopal Krishna Agarwal, the spokesperson of the BJP, Jaivir Shergill, spokesperson of the Congress, Siraj Hussain, former Agriculture Secretary, DK Joshi, Director and Chief Economist at CRISIL. Thank you all, gentlemen, for joining us on this India Development Debate. We've got much ground to cover in 26 minutes on the show. I'll start with you, Gopal Agarwal, since you represent the government. What took the government 4 years and 2 months to implement a poll promise? Has this been done keeping elections in mind? You know, ministers of the government are sort of going all out to call this MSP hike historic. The reality is it's just a 13% hike year on year, and there have been higher hikes even as late as FY13 of 15.7%. In FY 2009, there was a hike of over 20%. So how is this historic? Help us understand.
In the 4 years, the government has put up in the infrastructure where the risk in the farming sector has been addressed through the insurance cover. There has been infrastructure cover with regard to irrigation and other facilities. With regard, there has been a change with regard to availability of fertilizers through neem coated urea, and then there are alternative employment opportunities also being provided. Ultimately, our aim was to create a ecosystem where farmers get their income is doubled. That was the target that we had taken into our hand, and the three important aspects were reducing the cost of input also was an important factor, risk mitigation, and third was creating a better price realization for them. There has been through GST also, there is now a single market across India. A farmer from Mandsaur can sell to a consumer in the Delhi. There the onion is being sold at 2 rupees.
Okay.
Here the consumer is getting at 15 rupees. These
Right.
all have to be together integrated into this
Gopal
process.
Agarwal.
Now this is an historic increase, and at
Right.
point of time, this is 1.5 times of the cost of input. How much hike is not only the question.
Okay, Gopal Agarwal, hold your thoughts there. Okay, hold your thoughts there. You may disagree with the question, but the reality is you're doing it 4 years, 2 months in your 4 years, 2 months in your tenure. Let me take this across to Jaivir Shergill. And Jaivir, I know you're smiling there, but you were in power for 10 long years and kept revising MSP prices. What good has it done to the farmers in India? There is farm fury, yes, but it isn't in the making in the last 4 years. It's always been there. And surely being in power for 10 years would have made you realize that agriculture needs more than just band-aid solutions. You can blast the government for a half-hearted MSP, but is that the solution at all?
Firstly, with your kind permission, at a purely political level, it was quite interesting to see the Home Minister interested with the security of the country making an announcement related to agriculture and the Agriculture Minister missing from action, be that as it may. Now, as far as Congress is concerned, BJP's track record for doing things for the farmers is comparing a quail to an elephant when it comes to the Congress party. Whether it's a loan waiver of 72,000 crore, 2013 MSP rise, we did not snatch away the farmers' land by amending the Land Acquisition Act. Now, be that as it may, again, as you said it very rightly, this MSP decision is too little, too late. Why? Now let's come to the technical economic argument of it, sans the political rhetoric. The MSP is decided by something called CACP, Commission for Agriculture Cost and Prices, which is a government body. The MSP hike announced today is far less than the recommended by government's own body CACP under the Ministry of Agriculture. Paddy recommendation for MSP was 2,222.6 rupees. Government has announced 1,770 rupees, and this CACP has 2 members of the farming community. As a result, when the budget was announced, MSP hike was announced in principle, the farmer of Maharashtra was on the street because they knew their formula for calculation of MSP is not based on C2 as recommended by CACP. Point number 1. Point number 2, this is a classic case of robbing from the Peter to give it to Paul. Peter and Paul being the farmer in this case, both in one. The MSP hike does not factor in the 433% rise in excise duty on diesel, 11 rupee per litre rise on diesel prices, the 24% hike on DAP bag, which was 1100 bucks to 1299 rupees.
Okay,
so the MSP hike does not compensate the consistent increase in taxes on these things.
Okay, you are saying the MSP
the
hike.
GST imposed in the history of, since history is the flavor of.
Allow me to interrupt you. You made your.
No, last comment.
Sure,
the
very
GST
quickly.
imposed on the agriculture equipment.
Okay, I take that point, J.V. Shekhar. You
The
made your
GST
point on the
imposed
fact
on
that this
equipment
does
of
not
tractor,
factor in
tube,
the increase
tires,
in input
fertilizers.
costs.
Does this hike compensate that? No.
Okay, you are saying this hike is not enough, but let's take it to the experts in the panel. And DK Joshi, let me start off with you. You're the economist in the panel. Will this MSP hike make a material difference to farmers? If so, how much? Agricultural prices, after all, are down globally. So, can this sort of an MSP revision fight the realities of the market?
Well, I think what is true is that despite the output increases in the last 2 years, the farmers were not well off because the prices had fallen very sharply. And I think the government had exercised restraint in increasing minimum support prices. Now, I think what is being attempted is 2 things. I mean, one, the minimum support price is being moved up. There's been a 13%, if I take a weighted average of all the crops, I think 13% increase proposed for MSP. And the second is government is, I think one of the problems was that the farmer was not getting the minimum support price also. So now I think they are making an attempt to ensure that farmer is able to get that minimum support price, and government will get into the procurement of more aggressively than it has been in the past. Now, I think this will have some difference. This will make difference to the farmer's income, obviously. I mean, if it is executed well. But I think this is not a solution for the long term. I mean, I think the farmers' welfare improvement also requires other things, which is raising productivity, creating market infrastructure, and also I think warehousing facilities. So there are a plethora of things that also needs to be done, but I think those will bear fruit over a slightly longer period of time. But in the short run, I think farm distress was here for everybody to see. So I think this was very much necessary at this juncture.
No, I think you're hitting the nail on its head, that the farm fury had become so huge that no government could be seen not acting on this. And Siraj Hussain, are we in some sense living in a la-la land if we expect an elected government going into an election to not hike MSP prices? The key point is, have they shown restraint is the big question. Indiscriminate MSP revisions can wreck the economy is a view that a lot of economists hold. Has the government taken a balanced approach to this by restraining the quantum of MSP, and that's exactly what it's being attacked for?
I think since the finance minister committed the government to give a return of 50% over the cost of production, I think there was no option left for the government but to at least grant 50% return over A2 plus FL cost, which the government has done. Now, what has happened is that in the first 3 years of the government, the focus was on fiscal consolidation, and rightly so, because in the UPA 2 government, the food inflation was very high, and there was a lot of discontent in the country against very high rates of food inflation. So, in the first 3 years, the MSPs were raised very slightly 4 to 5%, as a result of which many people were arguing that even the cost is not being covered. Then came demonetization, due to which the prices fell all over the country, and from which we have not really recovered so far. So, even when in 2016-17 and 17-18, the government raised the prices, the MSP of pulses, the market prices did not rise, and the MSPs continue to remain high, and the market prices are even now lower than MSP. If you take even groundnut grown in Gujarat on a very large scale, the market prices are about 1,000 rupees less than the MSP. So, the government was forced into giving some relief to farmers by way of higher MSPs, and it is yet to be seen how it will translate into the market prices, because the farmers in the states where the procurement mechanism is robust, Punjab, Haryana, Western UP, Andhra Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Odisha, they would be happy because the paddy farmers would be able to realize the MSP. However, the rice farmers in Northeast, where MSP is just not implemented, there is no procurement in Northeast.
Sure.
The farmers in West Bengal, the farmers in Jharkhand, even rice farmers, they are not really going to benefit unless there is some other mechanism to reimburse them for not realizing the MSP.
Okay, fair point. That's an opening comment there from Siraj Hussain. But Gopal Agarwal, do you realize in some sense that, on the one hand, you have your political critics who are going to say this is grossly inadequate. On the other hand, you have economists who would say that this is not a sort of long-term solution in any case. What the criticism that's coming from the Congress as well is that, this is based on CACP's 2017-2018 recommendations, when it should have ideally been based on 2018-19 recommendations, which have neither been made public nor taken into account. And even based on last year's C2 itself, which is the bone of contention, you've gone ahead with A2 plus FL, paddy MSP should have been increased by 676 rupees per quintal. It's now 200 rupees per quintal. Ragi hike is just 997 rupees per quintal, whereas it should have been at least 1627 rupees per quintal. So, is this hike about optics? Is it just about managing perception? Is it just about being seen as you're acting to fix the agrarian distress?
No, the issue is, Sandeep, that in economic decision, there is not only single point which you have to tackle. There are multiple pulls and pressures and that you have to balance. One point has been mentioned that we wanted a strong fiscal discipline to be maintained by the government. Second thing was that CACP only decides gives the cost, it calculates the cost of production, and it doesn't, it is the Swaminathan Commission or for the government to decide how much will be the MSP above that cost of production, which is given by CACP. So, I think when the government had decided on some particular hike or increase, that is based on 1.5 times of the cost of production that has been given as per as CACP. Second thing is, you have to also look into how structurally we are transforming the agriculture sector. That pulses was, we were producing 17 million tons of pulses, and our requirement was 23 million ton, and balance we were importing. The government by increasing MSP last year on the pulses have been successful in increasing the production of pulses to 22 lakh tons, and at the same time save the cost from import to the tune of 1 lakh crore annually. That's how we are working. Even the import-export policy on commodities now is more aligned with the farmers' production. Earlier, it was only that decision for import-export policy on commodities was decided based on consumers. Now, the focus is on producers. So, these kind of structural changes we are doing. We are trying to people give alternate employment. 60% of our population is only dependent on agriculture, which is contributing 13%. So, unless you
no, I don't want to go back to that figure. That's so often abused, quoted by politicians.
Bring that. Yes.
Okay.
No, but ultimately,
okay, I don't want to go to how much of our population depends on that. That's always said. 1 second, Gopal Agarwal, hold your thoughts there. I want to take it across to Jaivir Shergill. Jaivir, I know you have your finger up there, and I have a very direct question for you. Everybody talks about this MSP, whether you're in government or you're outside, you're attacking the BJP today for not doing enough, half-hearted Jumla and all of that. The reality is, and I want politicians to understand, the reality is that MSP covers only 7% of the farmers. Only 7% farmers in India benefit out of this. It covers only 23 crops, and in reality, and this is all on paper, in reality it covers was only two crops, paddy and of course wheat later. Study after study has shown that it's the rich farmers in places like Western UP, Madhya Pradesh, Punjab and Haryana that benefit out of it. What is the whole point of then placing so much optimism, so much expectation on an MSP? This is perhaps just a political tool that you use when you are in power and they use when they are.
I think one factual error which was made on your show, and as my duty to correct it, CACP does determine the MSP. In fact, if you click on MSP on your CACP site right now, the first column on the left is determining MSP. Point 1. Point 2, now coming direct to your point. Let's be, when you saw it's a band-aid, whether it works or not. Again, even limited to this decision, please realize this announcement itself will only be implemented. No, I am talking about the BJP spokesperson, not you. He said CACP does not determine MSP, they only determine cost of production, which is a factually wrong statement. I am saying to him, not to you. Point 1. Point 2, now coming to your band-aid solution. The farmer also realizes that decision of today's MSP hike will only be implemented 1 year after, which is in 2019, when BJP government may or may not be there. So the farmer sees through this political lollipop which is being thrown, sans the implementation. Implementation will be done in 2019.
This is being implemented.
Gopalji, I may be wrong, pardon me, but please check up. Please check up with the Mandi, Kharif.
It will be.
If the debate is to be, he has to interject me, I can leave.
Agarwal, let Javir Shagil quickly make his point. I need to go back to DK Joshi as well. Javir, please quickly make your point. Yes.
Last comment, when you said band-aid solution, the Supreme Court government affidavit file, the government sleeping in a slumber with this late decision, saw 44% rise in farmer suicide. I am not saying Congress had the magic wand. Farmers didn't have difficulties, but they exaggerated the difficulties. There's a 44% rise. If this decision in whatever manner could have been taken timely, 2 lakh crore would have been given to the farmer. The exports are down by $9 billion. The imports are on a high by $10 billion. This is the imbalance you have created. In 4 years, in year 1, if you could waive off corporate loan of 2,72,000 crore, why did you not give this benefit to the farmer? Because
Javir, I take that point. I take that point. I don't want to go down this. I don't want us to go down that route.
This is a wrong statement. Which corporate loan has been waived 2.7 lakhs?
Yeah, exactly.
False statement.
Javir and Gopal Agarwal, allow me to interrupt both of you and let me go to the two other experts on the panel. They're waiting patiently and they're not used to such debates, I'm sure. So, DK Joshi, most wholesale prices are higher than MSP. How does that, how that translates into market prices effectively is a function of implementation. So, how does one assess the impact on inflation, the impact of this MSP hike on inflation?
Well, I think there's no clear-cut way to assess that, but I think one thing is sure that if the base floor level prices rise, the market prices also increase as a result of that. I think that's what we have seen earlier also. I don't think it's going to have much impact on inflation. I think it's going to be only mildly inflationary, because I think if you look at the MSP that has been announced today, I think it is for most of the crops this is higher than the prevailing mandi price. So this should, if implemented effectively, this should ratchet up the market price as well. If that happens, I think it will have some spillover effect into food inflation, but I don't think it is it's going to be material impact. And similarly, I think there's other trade-off. I mean, when you do this, I think there is a cost incurred by the government, which again depends on how much is procured. So I think, just to give you an example, we did a back of the envelope calculation that if the government procures the same amount as it did in 2017-18 Kharif, in 2018-19, then there is an additional cost of about 11,500 crores. So which essentially means that because the MSP has been raised, that is going to that's going to raise the cost of procurement by about 11,500 crores. Now, but the actual procurement will be higher than what it was last year, and if that happens, then this will keep moving up. So it's a function of how much government manages to procure, and what they don't procure, I think they might have to do some deficiency compensation. So I think all that will add up to some amount, I think, which is very hard for anyone to predict at this juncture, but it will definitely be over 11,500 crores.
Okay, just hold the thoughts there. As far as inflation is concerned, I think the verdict is still out on how much will the government procure and, wholesale price and what the market price will be. But Siraj Hussain, while no official figure has been given out on the fiscal impact of this move, and Mr. D.K. Joshi did talk about some money there. I think the figures that are also floating is 30 to 33,000 crore rupees impact on India's fisc. Can we afford that, or is it reasonable trade-off between fiscal implications on one hand and the health of our farms on the other?
Actually, it is not yet clear as to what the government is going to do to ensure that the farmers actually receive the MSP. Now, this figure of about 13,000 crores is basically the impact of higher MSPs on the quantity of wheat and rice procured by the government. Actually, this figure of 12,000 crores, that is my estimate, is only for procurement of about 36 million tons of rice. Now, it is not possible that the MSP of rice is raised by 12 to 13% and MSP of wheat stays where it is. So, we should expect the MSP of wheat also to rise. That may add another at least 6,000–7,000 crores. So, on food subsidy alone, we may see an impact of some 18,000 crores. However, we are not considering the impact on fiscal situation of the country if the farmers are given compensation due to prices lower than the MSP in mandis. For that, if the government comes up with a scheme for price deficiency payment as was operated by Madhya Pradesh, then the fiscal implications are going to be much higher. In ICRIER, we have written a paper with Dr. Gulati in which we have estimated, given 3 scenarios, prices lower by 10%, 20%, 30%. We have given different figures, they are already in public domain.
I take that point on board. Closing comments, really running out of time, even though it's a fascinating debate. But Gopal Agarwal, briefly, isn't it time to reconsider the whole approach of how we manage agri export and imports? I know Jaiveer Shergill touched upon it, but every government deals with this subject with a consumer bias. People are conscious of how the urban consumer is going to react, and so every time prices go up of things we import, prices crash, we curb exports. Isn't that unfair on the farmer? So if effectively you're not allowing the farmer to be linked to the market.
That's what I told you, that now the import-export policy is more aligned with the producers, and it is not that much aligned with the consumers. If the inflation is under control, we have the space by the government to align our import-export policy which benefits the farmers. That we have already done. I gave you example of pulses. And when Piyush Goyal says that we will maintain the fiscal deficit to 3.3, he means that discipline will be maintained, and that will be done through saving in the export and import policies, as has been done in the pulses, that we have saved 1 lakh crore by producing domestically and procuring, giving a higher MSP to farmers. So these kind of things will be definitely undertaken, and we are working on cost reduction. That's more important. If the input cost of the farmers are reduced, the same effect it will have on doubling of farmers' income, which MSP can have. MSP alone.
If you're doing all of this and still India's farms continue to be in a crisis mode, sir. Mr. Agarwal, you're doing so much and more, and still the farms are in a pathetic shape. But I'll take a quick political point from Jaiveer Shergill. Hold your thoughts there, sir. Jaiveer Shergill, what will it take to convince the political class? Mr. Agarwal, give me a minute. What will it take to convince the political class in this country that agriculture needs long-term investment? It needs a long-term solution, not subsidy. Or do you believe this entire argument that I'm making is perhaps way too utopian, unrealistic, given India's political economy and our political realities?
No, your argument is fairly in the interest of the farmer and much needed. The bitter reality is the farmers need to be looked at beyond merely a voter class, merely a fodder for votes by political parties. There is no such thing. that's the writing on the wall. You saw what happened in Maharashtra, how farmers stormed or came like their anger was like tsunami in Mumbai. So we can't take them for granted anymore. Point number 2, after hearing Mr. Agarwal, I'm reminded of an English idiom: operation successful, patient dead. He keeps on saying we did this, we did that, but then your government files an affidavit, sir, there is a rise in suicide. The agri growth dipped from 3.7 odd % to -9 somewhere and 1.6 today. So if everything was hunky and dory, the nation would not be witnessing 130 farmer organizations going on protest on as early as 4th or 5th June of this. So let's not live in palace of illusion. Let's call spade a spade, and let's start treating farmer as a priority and not merely a use and through toll, which you were trying to do before 2019.
While I take that point, Javeer Shergill, to close, all I would say is that for 10 years, your government gave farmers a top priority and adopted these kind of policies, successive MSP hikes, sharp revisions in SP, and eventually it did not alleviate farmer distress. Neither was it an economic success, nor was it a political success because your government was voted out of power. But anyways, on that note, we'll wrap it up here. Can't thank this wonderful panel enough. DK Joshi, Siraj Hussain, and of course, Javeer Shergill and Gopal Agarwal for joining in on that quick debate on the government's efforts to alleviate the farm crisis. Farmers in this country are suffering, and a move like this will give some short-term respite, and to that extent it may well be welcome. But of course, we need to look for long-term solutions to fix the mess in Indian agriculture.
Completely out of time on this edition of the India Development Debate. Up next is going to be Top 10 at 10. Stay right here for that.